saying that the deck was stacked against the Republican candidate Roy Moore. Well, I'm joined now by the US journalist and political analyst Beth Gardner. Does President Trump have a point here, or was this very much something of Roy Moore's own making?
Well, I think clearly what did it for Roy Moore was the very credible allegations that surfaced about a month ago that he was sexually involved with minors and particularly a 14-year-old girl. Alabama, as you said, is an extremely Republican state. This result comes on the heels of two Democratic routs in Virginia and New Jersey last month, but those are states that have been friendly to Democrats in the past. In this case, I'm not sure I can think of a more reliably Republican state than Alabama. So to lose there is a tremendous blow to the party as a whole and to President Trump in particular. I think clearly a lot of it is down to Moore and his particular sort of liabilities as a candidate, not just the child molestation charges, but he was a very much of an extremist fringe figure before. However, he really was embraced from beginning to end, even after the charges surfaced, by Steve Bannon, who obviously is Trump's sort of, close ally, and the leader of this kind of nationalistic, many would say white nationalistic, very pugnacious, movement within the party that has sort of delighted over the past year or two in kind of pushing the bounds of what has been acceptable in American political discourse. And they've done that quite successfully, taking some ideas that were very much on the sort of beyond the pale and bringing them into the mainstream of political sort of dialogue. And I think, despite what happened, it's pretty clear that that movement is where President Trump's heart lies and his gut. He endorsed Moore despite the really, serious trepidation and against the recommendations of the establishment leaders of the Republican Party. And this is sort of a harbinger, I think, of what's to come, because Bannon has promised, he calls it a civil war within the Republican Party. He's going to be trying to recruit more of these sort of insurgent, very hard-edged populist candidates for the midterm elections coming up next year. I think those elections already are looking like a pretty tough run for the Republicans, given what is clearly, I think, now President Trump's pretty significant unpopularity with a large segment of American voters who really seem to be pretty tired of the constant provocations, the tweets, the racially charged language, etc.
Indeed, Beth, that's what I was going to ask you, really. Is this more significant in terms of what it tells us about divisions within the Republican Party, or is it more significant that Doug Jones got a large female vote, and perhaps it suggests something more about wider American society?
Well, it's significant in both counts. I do think it's clear that a Democrat could not have won Alabama had the Republicans chosen really almost anyone else other than this very controversial candidate they picked, Roy Moore. But I think the fact that they picked him is, indicative of, as you say, that this really, very sort of fundamental divide now within the party. And I think it's a divide that's only going to grow. This defeat has certainly weakened Steve Bannon's hand, I think, as Republicans are going to look at him as the guy who sort of delivered a loss in what really must have seemed the safest Senate seat for the party that you could imagine.
And Beth, what does it mean for the Senate? Will there be legislation now that Trump hoped to get through that he won't be able to get through?
Yeah, I think that's quite likely. The Republicans had a very narrow edge to begin with. Now 52-48 goes to 51-49. So any hope of further legislative accomplishments after this tax bill, which probably will pass before this new Democratic senator takes his seat, is very unlikely next year. But I think even more significantly, looking down the line, is that it really boosts the Democrats' chances of potentially winning a majority in now not just the House of Representatives, but also the Senate next year. That is despite a very tough map that they face. They have a lot of defense rather than offense to play. This really increases their odds, and the consequences for the Trump presidency, if the Democrats win even one, but particularly both houses, really cannot be overstated. If the Republicans lose the Senate, not only can they not pass legislation, but they will not be able to confirm any of Trump's appointees, either judicial appointees or sort of cabinet and other administrative people. And what's more, if you take that a step further, it takes one house, the House of Representatives, to impeach. It takes two houses, the House and the Senate, to impeach and remove from office. So, that's a number of steps down the road, but should the Republicans lose Congress next year, depending on what the special investigator Robert Mueller finds in his Russia probe, I think that scenario has become significantly more likely now with this result from Alabama.
OK, Beth Gardner, thanks very much. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Now, a police investigation into the Grenfell Tower